Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast, the only remaining Survivor podcast that doesn't beg you for money via Patreon. I'm John, my co-host is Andy, and we're talking Kaoh Rong, episode 12. You may recall that last week, Andy said that Jason was the one that Aubrey should be most concerned with getting rid of, so obviously, Andy, you love the strategy here, am I right?
There is always the possibility that I never know what I'm talking about. Let's talk about that. Surprising probably a few people, I'm going to be a complete hypocrite here, because I don't think this was the right move for her, even though I don't mind the move for other people there.
Okay, so who are those other people you don't mind the move for?
Well, obviously it was a good move for Michelle.
I feel like that was the obvious answer.
And I think it was a good move for Sydney, because I think Sydney has some things invested in Michelle, rightly so. So, yeah. Neither of them should have been all that interested in removing Michelle from the game. And I do believe what I was saying last week about Aubrey being threatened by Jason had some validity. I just think the specific situation that developed here made it not necessarily the best move for her.
Yeah, I think as the episode went on and we saw where certain relationships were at, it's certainly not as cut and dry as it seemed last week.
Yeah, I'd say like in a vacuum, if, factors didn't change, Aubrey should have been pushing to get rid of Jason. However, I guess we're just diving right into it. So this is right. No fat in this episode. When Ty wanted to do it, for reasons.
Phrasing.
that was valid phrasing. I'm going to give that one to you.
Thank you.
But yeah, when Ty approaches her and says that he wants to do this, I think then it becomes a matter of Aubrey weighing her, options and which alliance partner she wants to go with. And, she gave that confessional. This isn't, me making up stuff. That is, her Sophie's choice, so to speak. And I think that with a lot of considerations that I do want to get into, Ty was the choice she should have made.
Meaning she should have flipped on Ty.
No, she should have done what Ty wanted her to do.
Okay. I was going to say, because that didn't seem to be on the table.
Yeah. Or conversely, she should have brought Ty around the idea that voting Jason out was the top priority. But she should have chosen to go with Ty, not to go with Sydney.
Yeah, I get the indication that her final three is likely her, Ty, and Joe. And so if that's the case, fine, keep Ty around and keep him happy because you want him sticking with you to the end.
Yeah, well, more than that, like, even if you're not sure which final configuration you want and you want to keep your options open, the one thing they know, if they're not voting out Ty this week, and nobody seems to be wanting to vote out Ty this week, and I think there's reasons for that, you should know that he is guaranteed to be in the final four.
Yes.
He is going to play his idol next week. Now, there's people on our site that have brought up a scenario where he doesn't play his idol, and that's fine, but you should never play for that. The plan in everybody's head there should be that we are going to have to live with Ty until the final four. So, he's the guy you gotta make happy. That's it. If somebody has to get gotten rid of at the final five, it's not gonna be Ty. It might be Sydney. It might be Michelle. But it's not gonna be Ty. So you know what? Maybe let the little guy have his way on this one.
Yeah, and again, if Aubrey is aligned with him,
it's not gonna be you, probably.
Yeah. That's the thing is, if he's got his idol, it's not gonna be used against you because he considers you one of the people he's going to the end with.
Yeah, and obviously some of this is borne out by the previews, which, could be complete bull. But it seems like he's kind of pissed of what happens, and I think that he has a very good reason to be pissed. She totally hung him out to dry at Final Tribal Council. And when your allies...
Or just Tribal Council.
Oh, yes. It's not the finals yet, huh? We're not having a Final Five? Yeah, she hung him out to dry at Tribal Council, and... yeah, when your alliance partners do that to you, you kind of don't feel really good about them as alliance partners. And what could happen next week is he could win immunity. And now he's got this idol. And, they let on that maybe he wants to work with Michelle, which, maybe sounds ridiculous, except when you consider that the last time his allies left him out of a vote, he turned to the people that weren't part of that vote, the people that were on the bottom. They told him to vote for Jason, and they all voted for Nick. And what did he do? He went with Jason and Scott because they were the only people who hadn't, betrayed him. Michelle didn't betray him. She was on the other side of this one. So I think he could flip to Michelle. And Aubrey could get burned as a result. So yeah, that you're not getting rid of Ty in the next two votes. So maybe he's your most important alliance partner.
She probably could have played it safe and voted with him. The thing is, I'm sure he expected her to bring Joe's vote as well. Because Aubrey has always promised Joe's vote along with hers.
And maybe not so much. So she couldn't get Joe to vote for Debbie.
That's true.
She couldn't get Joe to vote for Peter.
Again, but this is what she's promising to people, is that she delivers Joe's vote.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why Ty thought he had it locked down. That's why I'm sure he's walking away from tribal council completely blindsided. Because for his mind, Aubrey just screwed him. Yeah, I don't think he's sitting there thinking, oh man, she couldn't get Joe on her side. So yeah, she has created somebody very dangerous to her, and he is immune. The flip side of this argument, obviously, is if she does vote out Michelle, she pisses off Sydney. But guess what? Sydney doesn't really have as much power anymore. She doesn't have an idol, and she doesn't have Michelle.
Right, and then her last option would really be running back to Jason, which she's shown some strong reluctance to do.
Yeah, I don't know how much of an option it is, and again, that's 2 votes. You have an idol on your side. Like, I think you're protected there, and this is basically where it all comes down to me, and this is why it's situational. I do think Jason posed danger to Aubrey, because he is the only person that wasn't working with her. But when Ty, is saying that this is what's going to happen, this is what my advantage is, then I think Aubrey has 2 choices. Either go with Ty, or, she could have voted Ty out.
Exactly. If he's informed you that he's going to play his advantage.
And not his idol.
Yes. And you've decided you're not going to go with him anyway. Is he really that much of a part of your long-term plans that you're basically deciding to align with other people?
Yeah. And like I said, that she should not get rid of Ty. Getting rid of Ty would make her incredibly vulnerable. But she kind of just lost Ty. And she made the decision. Unless, again, it wasn't her decision at all, and she actually doesn't really have that much influence over this game, which is not a good thing, and not a really great look either. She burned Ty, so maybe you should, maybe fully burn Ty. Like, I think the reason why the vote was Jason instead of Ty for Sydney and Michelle is because they thought he had 2 idols. That was the conversation going around. So they were operating like Ty wasn't an option for them.
Right.
I do think that there was also some level of just wanting to vote for Jason. But, once Ty pisses them off and, if you're Michelle, he's coming after you, usually you'd try to see what you can do to get rid of Ty. Maybe they just didn't because they're afraid of he has an idol. Well, Aubrey knows he doesn't have an idol. So I think what she tried to do is split the middle and keep all of her options open, and I don't think that's what she achieved. I don't think that was an achievable goal here.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason she was going to have trouble anyway is Joe, as you've mentioned, can be stubborn on certain votes, and I think he just had a distaste for Jason. Sydney also had that distaste for Jason, so there's only so much she can do. Michelle's not going to be convinced to vote for herself because that can't happen. So with the writing on the wall, even with the double vote thing, maybe the odds just got too long and she had to concede this one.
Yeah, like if she did not have Joe's vote, yeah, okay, sure. I guess you got to vote for Jason. And as previously stated on this podcast, getting rid of Jason is a positive for her. But I can't say it's really a win if you can't convince anyone ever to vote the way you want them to vote. Like at some point that's going to probably have to happen. Like if all of your supposed allies aren't really up to doing things with you, then are they that useful as allies? Especially as we get close to the end here, and you kind of need them to vote the way you want them to vote, because otherwise you're the vote.
Hey, we should finally talk about Jason. Let's do the Jason postmortem now.
Yep.
What were your collective thoughts on Jason?
I think he was a valuable character to the show, and I think people who have strong feelings, negative feelings for him, is the feeling that they kind of want you to have. Like, that probably proves successful, If people are ambivalent about Jason, then he's a complete waste. Because I don't know what value he would bring otherwise. I mean, he has some strategy and all of that, but his value is to be a divisive character. And I felt like he was that.
Yeah. We said last week that Jason gave them exactly what they wanted. He occasionally will have some hints of strategy, but he's not that great at it. And obviously we saw the flaws in his social game, but it's funny that he shows flashes every time or every once in a while where he seems like he could be good at it. Like, remember when Ty apologized to him for flipping? Mm-hmm. Jason handled that perfectly. And even on reward with Ty in this episode, Tai was suddenly sympathetic to him. Michelle seemed less convinced, but there's just seeds there that potentially he could be a good Survivor player. It's just, I don't know that he could maintain that for 39 straight days.
Yeah, I think he would be better at a Survivor type game, that relies a little less on social dynamics. That game doesn't exist, to the best of my knowledge. But yeah, it's that he is an abrasive figure. Not necessarily means that everybody dislikes him. I do think that's been oversold. I do think there are people who find him amusing and probably genuinely like him. I don't just mean in life. I mean like actually in the game. Cause I'm sure there are people in his life that like him, right? I am not a person who tries to dissect what these people are really like by watching them on TV, because as social media has shown us many times, we have no clue. No clue.
And occasionally criminal charges show us that too.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I could tell by the way he fell in the fire that he was a pedophile. No, we don't know these people. It is a waste of time to try and assign real world morality to them. They are characters on a TV show, competitors in a game. But yeah, I think he has some strategy, but what will always, get in his way, unless he finds favorable conditions that they don't, is his personality, which is why he's on the show. He's on the show because he's got a personality that makes you love him or hate him. Because as incomprehensible as it is to probably anybody listening to this, actually, incomprehensible is probably, I think there's plenty of people that could understand. He has a sizable fan group. There are people who really into the type of person Jason is. But no, that's what he was there for. And honestly, beyond thinking that he's played his role really well, I think he's funny sometimes. I just do.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you mention pockets of fandom. If you're involved with the Survivor community long enough, you'll find that people are fans of anybody that has ever played this show to absurd degrees. I shouldn't throw stones, I guess, but...
Because if you do, you might break your favorite Survivor's arm.
That's right. Yeah, and I agreed with you. I think I remember the Merge episode when Jason got drunk. I found it hilarious just because I've hung out with people that act that way when drunk. It's obnoxious, sure, but It can be entertainingly obnoxious, and I thought it was. And again, yes, obviously there's some negatives to him, but like you said, he's supposed to be polarizing, so if he got the reaction out of you, that's what Survivor was going for when they cast him, and he was quite a find, I think.
Yeah, and actually to kind of just touch a bit more on his strategy, I do think that's another reason why like Sydney, for instance, wanted to vote him out. I think, for one, I think she was just done with him. I think she did, as soon as she turned on him, she wasn't turning back. But I think she was actually worried that he posed a threat. He did just almost beat her in a challenge by like seconds. And more than that, I think she's worried that he might have been able to worm his way in to manipulate people the way he talks. And this isn't necessarily borne out by all his interviews where he's talking about, everybody, I'm, a great talker and everybody was worried about that. She actually has a bonus scene where she says those exact words.
Oh, really?
Jason is quite a talker, and if we had let him stick around, he might, make somebody too paranoid or find a crack or anything, so he had to go. So I think that suggests that, yeah, he can do some stuff. I think he might fall into that group of survivors that are decent tacticians, but poor strategists. Because there's a difference. You can achieve short-term goals, but the long-term goal is more important.
So you're saying Sydney saw that he might pose a threat because he could, exert some sort of influence on other people. Anyway, let's move on. So let's talk about Tai, because a big part of this episode was Tai and his decision. From what we saw, he tried to run this vote, and it was all the execution of that strategy that caused the vote to not go the way that he wanted. Did he have the right plan?
I think for him it was fine. I don't think Jason posed much of a threat to him. I think he and Michelle are fighting for a spot at the bottom of the main alliance, and yeah, he wants that spot to be his. So I totally understand why he would want Michelle out before Jason, but his approach wasn't great. I think it might be oversold how bad it was. I think what we saw and how it, pissed Sydney off was more a result of the lack of time. I don't think he had time to approach it as democratically as was necessary.
Right. Yeah. From what we saw, Michelle walked in on their little powwow, and mid-conversation, it didn't look like that was stitched together too much. So, what are you supposed to do? You got to change the subject. You can't keep talking about your plan to vote Michelle out and counting votes and seeing if everybody's on board.
Yeah, and even more than that, he knew that she would be coming any minute now, so he couldn't, ease into the conversation. Now, I think here's the issue. And actually, Aubrey has a bit of a bonus scene on this as well. Not in this specific instance, just in general. And I watched it after I'd already thought of this, what I was going to say. But, if you're going to do a big move, a big blindside, especially within your own alliance, I think you kind of need to talk about that with one-on-one. You can't bring it to the whole group at once. You need to know where the temperature of the room is before you drop that on them.
Yeah, you need that one-on-one pitch, because you can then, if you get buy-in from the first person you talk to, you go to the second person and you say, hey, listen, I already talked to so-and-so. He or she is on board. What do you think of this plan? It's just an easier pitch than throwing a name out in front of a big group.
Or the person you brought on board comes with you, right? Now it's
Right.
2-1, and it's not, Ty is trying to get his way. It's this is where the group is moving and the new consensus,
Yeah.
It's easier to, have a bit of a back and forth and feel how somebody's feeling one-on-one. And if you want examples of how this is done, look to this season. When Aubrey got Ty to flip, she didn't, have the whole group there with her. That was a one-on-one move. When Sydney made the move to flip on Nick, she started by talking to Aubrey one-on-one first, and then later went one-on-one with Michelle. So I think that's kind of how it has to be done. So I think what he did, was like, oh, look at that. He's just trying to boss everybody around. I kind of think that was overblown, even though I do believe that was the genuine reaction of Sydney. But I think the mistake is trying to do it there at all in the first place. That's not where you can do it. And I don't think that they were that pressed for time. I think there was time.
I don't know how genuine a reaction that was from Sydney. I think Sydney wanted to get Jason gone and was disappointed that wasn't where they wanted to send the vote. And so her best angle with Aubrey was to say that she felt like she was shut out of that vote, and, she needed Aubrey to win her confidence back. That's how I read it. I could be wrong. You could be right that she was just sitting there and she was like, wow, Ty is really railroading me here, and I feel angered by that. But I got the impression that she was more interested in getting Jason out and keeping Michelle around, and that was the angle she used to argue it to Aubrey.
I think it's an emotional reaction because it went against what she wanted, right? I think she, took offense to it the way that you kind of take offense anytime that somebody suggests something who you don't really like that much. And I think this is kind of it. I don't think Sydney has forgotten that Ty voted for her. I don't think she's all that in favor of Ty being part of their little group. I mean, she was in favor of it enough to get rid of Scott. But I think even last week, she wouldn't have minded the idea of a Ty at the very least playing one of, the dozen idols I think that he has. I don't think Sydney is all that pro-Ty. So when he even deigns to speak enough, it's like, okay, whoa. I didn't even want you here except to use you. And now you think you're going to run things on my show? I do think that was her reaction. I don't think it really had much to do with him saying anything. He could have been like, okay, we're going to vote Jason. She could have been like, hey, you talk when you're spoken to.
Yeah, exactly. No. I decide we're voting Jason.
But yeah, I think she's written him off to a degree, and frankly, I don't fault her for that. I don't think she should necessarily have final 3 plans with Ty.
Well, funny you mentioned that, because we've speculated many times over this season that it's a terrible idea to bring Ty to final tribal council. I don't know that it looks like such a terrible idea anymore.
No, I would say not so much. I think Ty can be beaten by anybody.
Almost anybody.
I don't consider Joe as somebody.
That's fair. Yeah, it's funny that last week, I think we basically assumed Joe or Jason were the ones you'd want to take to final tribal council, because neither of them seemed like they stood a chance against anybody left. But right as Jason's getting voted out, it felt like Ty just slipped in and took his place there. And Ty feels like one of the most beatable players left, which is not something I envisioned.
Yeah, and I think there's a few things to that. And I don't want to take away his own culpability in it. I think a lot of it is because of the way he's played and how people have reacted to that. But I think the reason why people have reacted to it, the reason why people have bought into Jason's smear campaign, which, has now been taken up by Michelle, fairly successfully, and we'll talk about that, is he's kind of like the mom of the season. And not in the way like he's the caretaker everybody goes to for their emotional needs, but in the way that he's not allowed to play strategically and vote people out and do things, quote unquote underhanded. They don't expect that from the friendly, gay, older Asian guy. And once he started to do that, it's so easy for them to be like, no, you don't get to do that sort of thing.
Well, I do wonder if he sold it in the way that you did by saying like, hey, listen, I felt betrayed by you. I didn't think I could trust you. It's not me flipping on you. It's you flipped on me. So I went to people that I felt would embrace me. Maybe that's the pitch he could make.
Yeah, I do think, like I said, I don't want to completely, make him blameless in this. I think, he's not good at the explaining part of Survivor. And that's why it has been easy to brand him, this, flip-flopper that everybody now kind of reviles. Like, if we're reading the jury reaction before, they're all like, yep. And not just Scott, right?
Yeah, I mean, Scott was expected, but I think there was more than one person nodding to that.
But I kind of feel like, it's that he was supposed to be the honest, harmless player that's too nice to play Survivor, and that, will be a threat and we need to get rid of at some point, but we can totally trust him. And now that he's broken trust, which obviously is, a lot of people will take hits for, but like, he's not the only person who's flipped on alliances. Every single person there besides Joe has flipped on people that are sitting there in the jury. But he's the one that's getting branded with that scarlet letter. And I just kind of wonder if it's because he's not allowed to do that. Sorry, no. Us young people are allowed to be a little scheming and devious and play our game, but because it's so weird that like somebody like Sydney can be upset at him for this when it's like, he saved you. You should be happy that he flipped. And I don't fault her for not, because whatever. It's not in her best interest, to be fair to Ty.
Yeah, I think he definitely is pigeonholed into a certain set of expected behaviors. And the mom example is a great analogy. The problem is he can't really verbalize his reasons very well. And I think we've seen at some of these tribal councils that if he gets to a final tribal council, it could be an Amanda Kimmel level disaster. He's not really good under pressure at tribal councils.
Not at all. And that's like, he's not good at the explaining part of the game. And a final tribal council is all about the explaining part of the game. I will say one point, not in his favor, but one maybe tiny hope, is that in final tribal council, your opponent can't talk over you. Like, Michelle walked all over him and he just couldn't even keep up. And I believe that's happened before. That won't happen as much in Final Tribal Council unless, of course, the juror wants to do it to him. But yeah, it's, you each get your own time to speak. So maybe he would be able to, but at this point, I don't know why we would bet on that.
Right. I mean, it's a long shot bet, I think.
And so here's a question. Do you think his inability to do this is more about his personality, or do you think it's because English is not his first language? Or can it be two things?
If there's one thing I know, it's that it can be two things. I think it's more just who he is. I think part of the reason that he publicly spurned Michelle in the middle of that tribal council was because he's not used to being basically attacked like that, because in his real life, he probably is a lovely, wonderful person. And why would that person get attacked very often?
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it, and that's where I was going. I mean, I do think that, it probably is harder to, quickly verbally spar with somebody in a language that isn't necessarily your own, although I believe he's probably spoken English for quite some time. But, I mean, heck, I know, I speak English and like slow English. But no, I do think, it's like, he's not used to attacks on his character. It's not something he's ever had to like combat the perception of being devious. Because like, he should be able to defend that. Jason's all like, he flipped twice, and he should just be like, yeah, on you! Like, why does anybody care that I flipped on Jason? You guys all wanted me to vote on his flip on Jason. You and the jury, besides, were cheering when I did that. This should be his hero moment. And, to Jason's credit to a degree, although it's not going to help him, he's totally made that a bad thing.
Yeah, in the span of 2 tribal councils.
And maybe that's how Sydney's point. He's a talker. He's dangerous. Because yeah, it's like the smear campaign on Ty is such that, yeah, like I don't necessarily think he will definitely lose, but I don't like his chances.
Yeah, one thing I do like his chances for is getting to the final 4 because he still somehow holds his idol.
Now, I will say that, that everybody seemed to assume that his advantage led to some kind of idol or a super idol, which I don't fault them for. Those are fine enough assumptions. In fact, prior to this extra vote thing, advantages have been clues to the idol, like it was for Malcolm and Kaoh. Then that might explain why they were even extra motivated to bring him in once he had those things.
And also, when they flew out for this season, had the Worlds Apart advantage even happened? No, so they had no reason to suspect that it was going to be a double vote.
Yeah, no, in the lives of these people, a double vote has never happened.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's fine that they assumed that he had some kind of 2 idols. Yeah, there might have even been a little bit of confirmation bias of why he never played his idol up until now. And yeah, like, what's interesting is that maybe that's why they suddenly realized we should stop treating Ty like an outsider and try to bring him in because now he's really powerful with 2 idols. Because before they didn't know for sure that he had 2 idols until he announced it at Tribal Council, but also he hadn't gotten the advantage yet. So that might have been why Aubrey was like, okay, we really got to win over Ty, even though theoretically we have like a 6-3 majority or something like that. And speaking about the advantage, yeah, we finally saw a double vote played and the person didn't go home.
Yes, it's baby steps. We're almost there to where it might actually be relevant in this game.
Will it?
I don't know. I mean, is it doomed to failure? I kind of ran through some scenarios in my head, and there's really so few situations where it comes in handy, and the odds get even longer when you take into account that it needs to be a person on a certain side of the vote in one of these possible scenarios, and then using it correctly. Just the odds get really long on that. It's much more difficult than just an immunity idol play.
Yeah, I will say, like, we probably don't yet have enough data to completely write it off as not a thing. In particular, because, like, only one person has ever played knowing about its existence, right? Like, no playbook has been written. Like, only Fishback had ever seen Dan play it, right?
Yeah.
And his was a little slightly different. But yeah, as you say, for it to matter, you kind of have to be, like, in a alliance that's down 1 vote to another alliance. Like, that's kind of
tied, or
yeah, tied or down 1. Like with the vampire vote, down 1 will do it for you.
Right, and so that's what I was going to get to, is the vampire vote from Cambodia. I feel like that might be the future of this. If you're going to keep the extra vote thing around, maybe that's the way to go, because that's a little bit bigger swing.
Yeah, and and I understand, like, you need to tweak. The idol wasn't fully formed out the gate either. But I think the problem is it is a group reward that's disguised as an individual reward.
Right.
It is something to benefit an alliance. It doesn't really benefit an individual all that much. Because 1 vote really isn't doing much for any one person, right? 2 votes is really not all that powerful. And it's weird that everybody kind of started acting like it was. And maybe that's because there's been, like, duos that have been successful within groups. But yeah, I don't know. It's like you can't even use it at the final 4 where, like, your 2 votes would carry the day. Like, it really is like an extra vote to add on with other people. Whereas an idol, as we've seen, can, like, negate the opinions of 9 people. And it's fun and a little interesting that when this double vote was first introduced, a common reaction was, whoa, too powerful. But I will say that, like, that's kind of the reaction to, like, every goddamn thing this show has ever introduced.
Yeah, and I think generally our attitude with any sort of gimmick introduction into the game or game tweak is always, let's see how this plays out before we get too harsh in criticizing it. Just because we might have theories of how it's going to play, but until you actually see it run through a season, you don't know. Players might use it differently than you imagined.
Yeah, and, like, obviously there are other things, not, like, it doesn't just have to be down one vote or whatever, vote splitting becomes a thing, although we saw how successful that was. But so there are elements, so maybe it will have some value. I do think there's tweaks, and like you said, the vampire vote might be one. I think it will be maybe a little more interesting once, we see some players that have a bit of a playbook, to go with. But I think, for one, it can't be a hidden advantage anymore, because it wouldn't really be hidden. Jeff would be like, and there's a hidden advantage. Everybody's like, extra vote. The surprise element is now gone. They were able to do it for 3 seasons, because, like we say, Ty couldn't have seen the other 2 times that it happened. And with Steven, you don't necessarily know that the way that it happened before is the way it's going to happen again. Hidden advantages have changed over the years, from clues to immunity idols to, a bonus in the upcoming challenge or whatever like that. Yeah. So I think it can't be a hidden advantage anymore, at least not until they have a different hidden advantage somewhere in between. I also wonder if the public granting of it kind of negates its value.
Yeah. And Steven's talked about this too. It's once you have it, you need to use it right away, because the target so quickly moves on to you just for having it.
And I could see at the beginning, you think, well, cool, okay, we have this powerful, thing, we have to counterbalance it by the threat, right? But I think it's kind of shown that it's not near as powerful as something that is actually often hidden. And in fact, they've realized now that you kind of have to hide who the idol holder is. Otherwise most people don't even want to be it. As we saw in Blood versus Water, where they're just burning clues, right? Nobody wanted to be branded as publicly having something. And that's what's happened with this advantage. So I think, you have to not publicly grant it, which ends up becoming a thing. Can you imagine, digging for days and then coming up with you have an extra vote. Oh, can I trade this for an idol? But that's the last thing is, I think it might be introduced too late in the game to matter. As to your point, is there's only certain scenarios where it could come handy. And I think a lot of those scenarios are earlier, not later.
It's a good point.
Imagine having this at the merge vote.
Or even not even that. Just do it at the swap early on.
Yeah. Yeah, that swap could be a huge thing, right? Yeah. You got swapped onto a tribe, but all of a sudden there's only 2 of you and 3 of you due to the, unfairness of random luck. This could be a way of counteracting that, and that could almost feel equitable to a degree, because obviously the fear, the thing that drives the fear amongst fans is that it will create an unfair situation, an imbalanced playing field. I think one of the reasons why it doesn't bother us is it's an imbalanced playing field. This is the most Survivor. This is imbalanced. Some people are strong and some people aren't. Some people get to be leaders and some people don't. That's how it is. And I think, throwing other random elements of imbalance is actually maybe a way of evening it out, depending on how it works out.
I'm just very proud of us for, fixing this, vampire vote, double vote thing. We figured it out.
They should consult us more often.
I mean, I feel like once they use this, kind of get owed royalties, right? Isn't that how that works? Do I have to say copyright or something?
Well, at the very least, the clue should be wrapped in purple.
I mean, you could go a little further, our logo on it or something. I mean, it's kind of almost their let's not get into big copyright discussions here.
Yeah, I know. They're really, you guys? You want to talk copyright for a second? Because I've got 15 cease and desists on draft. But no, seriously, talk to us. We can work this out, Survivor.
Yeah. Small fee. That's all I'm asking. We won't ask our audience for Patreon money, but hey, Survivor's got some cash they can throw around.
Well, we won't until we will. I don't know. That's another discussion for another day.
No.
The answer of which boils down to so many of our answers. That sounds like a lot of work, man.
Yeah, exactly. Anytime that things require work, you can just assume we're probably not going to do them.
So we'll concede on that one.
Hey, what a clever transition, my friend. Just like Aubrey has done multiple times this season when it comes to her targets. This is, I think, the 3rd time at least that I can recall.
Yeah, at least. There's a possible 4th, depending on how much we trust the edit or whatever. Most of her votes, basically. So the first vote on the Brains tribe was, that's when they voted out Liz.
Yep.
She at first, and I don't know how hard or how set she was, but she first pushed for Peter.
Yep.
And then it was clear that Joe and Debbie weren't into that. So Liz. And, whatever. That's fine. At the time I was advocating, it's I think you could probably continue to work with Liz more than you can continue to work with Peter. Which, bared out, but it was a fixable problem, right?
Right. Results bore out that it was fine to do that. So Next time was Anna over Ty. She was initially pushing for Ty and just people weren't having it. They wanted Anna gone instead. So she relented.
Which she should have. That was the right choice.
That was fine. Yep. And then the very next vote, Peter over Julia, to the degree that Aubrey actually crossed out her vote because she was like, I guess, and then caved and voted out Peter. Now we've got Michelle over Jason. And are any of these worthwhile to have fought for? I mean, is it fine that she conceded on all these?
Possibly, I guess is the thing. I also feel like there was another one there. Maybe it's that she, maybe voting out Debbie, but that was her idea. So that I might be wrong there. But yeah, like it could be fine. Like you said, the second choices were all okay for Aubrey, and I think that's what most of her backers would suggest. It's like, whatever, survive in advance. But it's like, at some point, I think she needs to demonstrate the ability to convince people to vote the way she wants them to vote. I think that's kind of important if she really wants to be a winner. Like, I think anyone but me is fine if you're like the underdog and you're just trying to survive in advance. It's fine for Michelle. But like, if Aubrey's in charge of this game, can she be in charge of this game sometime?
Yeah, I think that I praised her very early on. Don't expend the capital if you don't have to, if it wasn't a must-have vote. I kind of maybe don't fault her on all of these because the only one that I could maybe be convinced on as a must-have vote is this one with Michelle over Jason. And that's still a pretty weak argument. I think voting Jason was probably fine, and I think the results might bear that out.
Yeah, no, it's sick. Like, yeah, I mean, I heard a guy once say that she needed to get rid of Jason, so
yeah,
I'm not gonna point that too far. But it's just, I think it's one of those things. It's fine to concede until it won't be, And I worry that maybe she just is unable to get people to do what she wants them to do. And that'll become a problem unless she's immune the rest of the way. Because at a certain point, what she ultimately wants them to do is A, not vote her out, and then B, vote for her in the end. And if she isn't very convincing at that, that's a problem. And I think also, more in a general survivor sense, less specific to Aubrey or in these scenarios, is I think being too compromising on everything. I think there's value in being compromising at sometimes. You don't always need to assert your will. We've seen people this very season be very turned off when somebody asserts their will. We saw it possibly in this very episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're compromising too often, it's a kind of a good way to get pushed into doing things you don't want to do when the person you're compromising with always isn't really all that good at compromising themselves.
Yeah, and to Aubrey's credit, she has run some votes. I mean, she has called some shots that she didn't concede on.
Which ones? Let's talk. I'm not saying she hasn't. I just want to talk about them.
So the Debbie vote was hers, I would say, from what we saw.
Yeah, I agree. It was probably the secondary target, but in the end, that was her choice. Although I guess Debbie became her choice because she was unable to convince Debbie to vote for Julia. Although Julia was immune by that point, but even before that, she was mad at Debbie because Debbie was never going to vote for Julia.
Yeah, and I don't think the Nick vote was hers. She went along with it, but
as she should have. It was like, hey, cool, not me.
Absolutely. And again, the anybody but me strategy is totally fine as long as you don't do something in those votes that's going to screw your game. And I think just from what we've seen from confessionals from other players, people talking about her, they seem to respect Aubrey as a strategist or a player in this game. Despite her constant concessions on these votes, she seems to have a good reputation among them.
Yeah, so I think the big vote she was able to dictate, the one that, we praised her to high heavens for, was the Scott one. Is it that impressive to convince people to vote for Scott? And frankly, is it that impressive to get Ty to flip to your side?
Well, yeah, and I think really Ty probably picked that target. And Aubrey said, I have the votes. Just, you tell me and we're with you. We're behind you. This is your move. So I don't think it was her saying, okay, let's vote Scott, Ty. I think Ty told her that and she was on board because why would she not be?
Yeah, what was her other option? Julia, I guess, right? Like Jason was immune. So, I mean, the other option was not doing anything with Ty and targeting him. So, yeah, that's kind of my point is I don't know if she has the ability to control a vote. And you don't always need to control a vote to win Survivor, but I kind of think she will. Like, I think she's going to need to control at least one vote coming down the stretch, if nothing else, so that vote isn't her. And I'm not saying she can't. I'm just saying there's no evidence so far, and that is of concern. Because if she goes out, there's a good chance that it's because she is now outnumbered by people who would rather not work with her than do. It's possible that, Sydney, Michelle, and Ty take her out. Especially if, the person whose vote she controls only never seems to control is just wiped off the board without a vote.
We're still holding out hope for that one.
And it could happen. And I'm not faulting her for no, I better make these moves in case Joe is a medevac because I heard an interview with Mark Burnett before the season. But it's just the thing. If she can't exert some level of control over the game, that could be a problem.
Speaking of exerting some level of control over the game, Sydney is someone who is not backing down on these votes and has had I think a better success rate at getting her plans pushed through.
Mm-hmm.
This matters very little to me. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally enjoying it. Love the way Sydney has gotten this far. I don't necessarily care how great she is at the strategy. I just love Sydney on my TV.
Yeah.
You're so wrong. I've gotten the impression, and this is admittedly a bit of a stretch, okay? So before anyone starts harassing me for this, she reminds me just a little bit of Tony, where I'm just excited for the next confessional from her because now I'm just expecting to be entertained. I don't know what I'm going to get. I just know that I'm going to be happy to watch it happen.
I mean, I guess under that really broad definition of she is somebody I like and thus I like to watch her do things. Oh, yeah, sure. I guess she's like Tony because you also like him, but I'm not sure you'll find many other persons like, oh yeah, what a great comparison. In part because I don't know if she's anywhere near as interesting as she is. She's alright. She's fine. I've enjoyed things she's done. I like, some of her confessionals or her facial expressions. I like the way she'll,
Well,
talk people. I'm not sure the censored way of saying that. But
trash talk.
Yeah, but it's more than that.
Well, if you're struggling to like her, she don't care about your struggle, boo.
Look, I like her, but she's fine. I don't know. I don't see myself talking about Sydney much when this season's over, unless things change the next few episodes. Be like, oh yeah, she was a part and parcel of a good cast. That's where I feel. Actually, I'm going to let you talk a bit more because clearly you are more passionate about the subject.
Obviously. Why would I not be? I feel like I have to isolate the I don't care about your struggle and put that little clip at the end of the podcast. I feel like that should join the Tony and Shireen bits that are already there for those of you that don't listen all the way through to the end.
Excellent. It's been a while since we've let, key portions of, the podcast and the website be turned over to your personal favorites. So that's good.
It's been so long. I feel like people have been clamoring for this, not, verbally or in any sort of written form, but they're probably thinking it at least, I feel.
So I have a different comparison for Sydney. And I'll see if anybody else agrees with it. I don't think you will at all. And this obviously has a little bit more to do with gameplay, but it is, based on personality. And I should say, it's based on the way she's been presented because, people are like, oh, that's just the way they're edited. It's like, all I know is the way she's edited. I cannot invent things for her. I'm not invested in doing that for her. I think she's the sane Abby Maria.
Oof. Okay, I can guess where you're going to go with this. Let's see if you end up where I think you're headed.
Yeah, it's actually probably pretty obvious. I actually discussed this with Emma and she figured it out right away. If you mess with her, you're dead to her. And basically, it seems like a lot of her strategy is based on who just pissed me off. That person is gone, go. And that's what seemed to happen, why she flipped the whole game and got rid of Nick. They came back from a conversation. He said things that kind of put her the wrong way, and she's like, that's it, done. I'm flipping this whole thing.
You checked her, boo.
Yeah. And now Ty just quickly I think it should be Michelle. And she's like, no, who does he think he is? I'm moving on him. And that's kind of like it is. It was like, you're working with Abby Maria, everything's fine, and then she gets pissed at you, and it's done. It's over. And I also kind of feel like that's the kind of way it was when Aubrey was trying to work with her in that conversation. And it's probably in reality a little more collegial, a little back and forth, but it's kind of like, no, this is the way it's going to be. And I'm pissed. And Aubrey's like, okay, what can I do to keep Sydney happy? I better do this or she's going to be so hard to work with, which is kind of the way everybody dealt with Abby Maria.
Counterpoint.
Yep.
There have been several scenes this season where Aubrey went to talk to Sydney because she was the sane, rational one that Aubrey could have a strategy discussion with.
Yeah, no, she's the sane Abby Maria. But I do think that, a lot of her moves and her actions are driven by anger. I think there's a lot of emotion in her gameplay. And honestly, I think that's some of what you're responding to.
I am all about enjoying someone that makes entertaining TV for me. I just think that some of the decisions she's made, at least, have been pretty justified. I can, if you go back and look at the rationale for those votes, and yes, they might have been emotionally motivated, but the Nick vote was partially about paranoia.
Which is an emotion, by the way. I just want to...
That's what I'm saying. So, it was partially about paranoia, but was she wrong?
Maybe, maybe not. I think enough time has passed that it doesn't matter, I think if she doesn't win, doesn't really have to matter about how she flipped that, unless at a jury it does. I think she's had time to work her way in. So no, like, I spend a lot of time in this podcast justifying her moves, but, she isn't on the show enough to actually be a Tony level character for me. What we've been presented with, the story of Sydney is, when she gets angry, she does stuff, and she's actually very successful with it. And when she doesn't, she's often not on the show at all.
Yeah, I said she reminds me a little of Tony. I'm not saying she is an exact duplicate of Tony. I'm just saying, from the perspective of a viewer, I'm getting the same joy of watching where when I'm watching Cagayan, I'm waiting for the next Tony scene because I'm like, okay, if this is lagging, just throw some Tony in there and I'm going to be entertained again.
All right. I'm sure you do. Hey, speaking of enjoyable TV.
Damn, you stole my transition. Okay, so let's talk final issue here. Michelle's tribal council performance. Is this her best performance of the season so far?
Yes. And I'm saying in-game actual doing things performance, not, she was fairly present in the edit performance. Like, actually doing things. Yes, this was her best thing she's done.
Yeah, I thought she made a great case for herself at that tribal council. And more importantly, she did it where all the jurors can watch. She made Ty look pretty bad, to the point that, like, we saw several jurors nodding along, like, yes, exactly. And Jason was obviously helping her on that hard sell. But I think she performed very well. I don't get that Amanda Kimmel vibe from her. I feel like if she's going to be in a final tribal council, she's not going to be falling all over herself.
Nah, she'll be blandly fine like most performances are.
Yeah, I think this was, for her, probably the best moment we've seen in a long while.
Well, I think what you mentioned was the key thing for the jurors. Because in terms of an actual gameplay, there was nothing there. Like, the vote wasn't for she didn't save herself from a vote or anything like that, right? Like, the majority of people walked in knowing that they were voting for Jason. I think Jason also walked in knowing that he was probably being voted for. The only person that didn't know was Ty, and it didn't matter, right? So, like, it wasn't a move that impacted, the game up until that point at all. So she didn't save herself. I don't even think she made a case for herself. But I think she impressed the people that will be deciding whether she should be the winner or not, should she get there. I think she also helped bury Ty. I think it was really good. And it wouldn't have helped anywhere but where it was. So, yeah, I think people probably came away with that in the jury box. Like, oh, okay, look at Michelle fight. Maybe they even feel like she did something. She didn't, the end result was, Ty is really coming after me. I'm not going to vote for him, right? But, as I said, I think there were legit reasons. I think she felt like Ty had an idol, so that would have been pointless. That would have been like voting herself out. But, yeah, if a juror would stop to think of it, it's like, well, she was so angry at Ty. Why'd they vote out Jason?
Well, I think the jurors probably have heard rumors of idols.
Yeah, no, they might be fine. I think they'll have walked away with that thinking highly of her, and I think they'll have reason to. She did good.
Right, and we've talked before about the jury wanting a rootable underdog, some sort of proxy for themselves, and so if people are somehow actually pissed at Ty, which it seems like at least a few of them are, Michelle being the one to stand up and, stand up to Ty, this terrible villain somehow, that works for them, if you're watching that, you're like, oh, Michelle's sticking it to Ty because I can't. Phrasing. I think that definitely helps her cause.
Absolutely. Actually, that's an excellent point. And I had thought of it earlier, but I did not say it. Yeah, I think that if you said she made a solid case for herself, that was probably it. That
Yep.
I am your avatar. I am the underdog. I will stop the big villain Ty. Or at the very least, I am going to call Ty out on his BS. Because it's not enough for Jason to do it. He's just scrambling. Even though, I guess, technically, she is kind of
So
scrambling.
was she.
But yeah, no, I think it was good. And moreover, as we talked about his chances dwindling, I guess we could quickly touch upon this. Another thing we said last week is if Jason goes home, there goes Michelle's chances of winning out the door. That's not true.
Yeah, I feel like Ty, like I said, slipped into that Jason role, so there's certainly someone else she could potentially beat.
And she just demonstrated that she could really beat him.
Yes, pretty badly in a verbal exchange.
Yeah, which is what it is, you know.
Yep.
So if people are going in there with open minds and ready to decide things, I got my money on Michelle and not Ty in that battle. I will say quickly that I don't think Ty is now at 0%. I think the window is almost closed, but there's a window, and what he would need to do, we're not going to get into what everybody needs to do to win, but since his situation changed so drastically, he needs to beast it in the next, however much challenges and everything that's left. If everybody thinks that you're this flipper or all that, just be that, and just be so impressive that they're like, oh, well, I guess you did what you needed to do, Ty. So I think he needs to win every immunity. I think he needs to flip on the people he needs to flip on and just like, I played this game for myself. Now, of course, where it falls apart and where we earlier discussed, I don't know if he can give that argument.
Right, because people want him to behave in a certain way.
Right. But yeah, at this point, like, that's out the window, and like, trying to be conciliatory and apologetic will only fuel the fire more. So he just has to be awesome. And so that people, when they get there, it's like, well, you know what? You kind of bothered me, you pissed me off, but I can't deny you did it. Especially if he's against somebody who really can't make any claims to being awesome.
It just might be difficult after a month of being out on that island, experiencing this Ty, to suddenly see a totally different Ty for the final, week of being out there, and then suddenly say, oh, no, this was the Ty I expected all along. This is the guy I'm giving the $1 million to.
Oh, and again, it's a sliver of the window.
Sure.
It's letting in a draft at this point, but that's what he would need to do. I don't really think he could do it.
All right, let's do some predictions for next week, and I'm on a roll, so I'm going to save mine for last so you don't just copy my predictions so that you can get another win.
So you got another win. Like, when did I ever win? Oh yeah, no, just the week before. Real quick, 'cause I'm rolling over the Joe Medevac prediction.
Oh, okay. Well, as I just mentioned, I've gotten 2 predictions in a row correct. I have no idea how this happened, but I just assume that this is a streak that's going to continue because, if anything, I know that past performance is indicative of future results. That's what I learned at business school. So this week, I'm going to say that it's Sydney. And it's going to happen because Ty wins immunity, gives his idol to Michelle. She plays it, saves herself. Sydney goes home. I would be devastated by this result, but at least I can gloat at being correct.
Why Sydney? Why does he target her?
Who knows? Because she was not down with his plan last week to vote out Michelle. Again, I'm probably wrong.
And why does Michelle do it?
Listen, I'm probably wrong about this. Both of my predictions the past 2 weeks, well, actually, I guess Julia, I was like, nah, it's probably Julia. But the Jason thing, I was like, listen, I'm going to be wrong on this. I just happen to be right on this. So I'm going to go with the same strategy. And
See, I kind of feel like that's just why I was so strongly opposed to what Aubrey did. She'd be the target, and that he's probably a little pissed at her. Well, what does he have to be pissed? No, but that said, I could see it being Sydney, just because it's like, yeah, as you say, she hasn't really been all that pro Ty, so maybe Ty's like, screw it. You.
Yep.
Maybe I can still work with Aubrey.
Why not?
And I should say, because, people are pro Aubrey, might be upset with me as they've been a number of times. Even though there's a good chance that she's the person I want to win this season. I think she did some damage with her relationship to Ty. She might be able to overcome it. Like, it's possible she'll be able to do the damage control. Even if that's the case, then hey, good. You got rid of Jason, and now you can get it. Actually, so here's one more point I want to bring about that, because we have a minute, is the people that wanted to preserve Michelle over Jason. And those people being, in the end at least, Aubrey, possibly Joe, Sydney. What's their plan for Final 5? Because it can't be Ty. So Jason's gone now. What was the plan for the next vote after that?
Yeah, I have no idea. This is why I'm just going to wing it with my prediction because
Well, this isn't prediction now. This is kind of bringing it back to the beginning. Because if your plan at Final 5, once you got rid of Jason, was Michelle, then again, just let Ty have his stupid way. You know, it's like, if you're going to vote her out anyway, then just, okay, one or the other, you know. But no, it was set in the stone. It can't be this. It has to be Michelle. So, and again, if it's for Sydney, then it's like, well, no, I was planning on flipping and getting rid of Joe or Aubrey. Okay. And she needs Michelle to do that. Or that Sydney's worried that the plan is to get rid of her and thus she needs Michelle. But who's the plan? Because the plan can't be Ty. So if it can't be Ty, and now that Jason's gone, who's their target? If it's Michelle, then what did you just accomplish? You threw Ty away in order to vote Michelle out a couple days later instead?
I'm going to give you a great big shrug here because there's one thing that I've realized about this season is that none of the players seem to have a really coherent long game strategy.
Yes.
There's been a lot of entertaining players. Don't get me wrong. I've actually enjoyed the season. It just, a lot of them, almost to a person, have done things that just made me scratch my head. Like, really? This is the path you're choosing here?
Yeah, what's Michelle's long-term plan? Because and I mean by we, I think everybody in Survivor fandom was like, oh, well, she's gotta get to the end with Jason. And all she talked about until it was like, oh, Ty's trying to get me out was, we gotta get rid of Jason. And it wasn't like, I gotta get rid of Jason because otherwise it's gonna be me. It's that Jason's gotta go. I didn't like the things he did a couple weeks ago, and I don't believe that he likes elephants. She was targeting Jason, the one person who we thought she should be going to the end with. Now, I think, we've conceded. We might have been wrong with that. But what's her long-term plan? Besides, don't vote me out. What's anyone's long-term plan? I think Aubrey's is at the very least get to the end with Joe.
Yeah, I think that's at least part of it. And I think she could probably go either way on Sydney or Ty in that other spot.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. They're all planning that there's another spot. We all think it's a final 2, which I think a lot of people have done enough work this week to suggest it might not be a final 2. There have been there have been
at least
several other seasons where they got to this point and they still just did a final 3.
Yeah. And if it's a final 3, that's not a good thing for certain people. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. And I think some people, if you're on the bottom, you don't get to plan for the end game so much. It really is just about survive and advance. But that shouldn't be the case for Sydney, Aubrey, and, whatever, Joe. And yeah, that's what I want to know. What was the long-term plan? Why was it so important that you couldn't vote Michelle out now? Because you're going to have to vote her out next time, or you were flipping on yours, because Ty is not an option.
Well, if you want to tell Andy what that long-term plan was, you can find him on Twitter. He's at Purple Rock Andy. Or if you want to talk to me and yell at me about how Sydney is not remotely like Tony, I'm at Purple Rock John. The show is at Purple Rock Pod. And of course, we have a website, which is purplerockpodcast.com. We do live blogs. We put fantasy scores up there. We occasionally have blogs from Emma.
You can subscribe to the podcast on any number of podcatchers, including iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. And if you'd like to support our podcast through many other means, pick a different podcast, I guess.
Yeah. If you're really into paying for Survivor podcasts, there are other podcasts that will gladly take your money.
All right. Well, I think people really want to hear our not at all copyright violation theme song.
That's what it's like when a woman wants a baby.